the thrill of sort of getting a whole project is what kept me going. I really enjoyed a final product that I could be proud of and putting all the work in. It was almost fun. It's rare sometimes after doing music for a long time, you know. I mean, we all do it because we love it, right? We love music, but there are times that it's so overwhelming. You need to come up to this date. You have to get your piece ready for this date. Oh, you have a gig in 3 days and you haven't touched your tenor in a month because you haven't had any gigs. Oh wait, now you have to start teaching these, and it's all overwhelming, and then you forget. You know, sometimes music is just supposed to be fun. We do music because it's fun. We play music because it's fun. And so that's what was the way that kept me going. There was no pressure. I didn't need to prove anything to anybody for these quarantine projects. I just was able to have fun doing it.
Have you ever wondered what's behind the music of your favorite composer? Where does their inspiration come from? What do they stand for? What are they most passionate about? What's behind the name at the top of the page? My name is Jeff Herwig. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I'm going to bring you the answers to those questions and more. Welcome to Composer Disclosure. Hello friends, and welcome to Composer Disclosure episode number 2. Today, I'm ecstatic to be able to interview my good friend and fantastic composer, performer, educator, and amazing all-around human being, Clint Bleil. Of getting to know Clint during our time together at Slippery Rock University, where we were both music majors and members of the saxophone studio of Dr. Jason Kush. He has since gone on and earned his master's degree from the University of Miami's Frost School of Music and is currently accomplishing some really awesome things, which we'll talk about in today's episode. Clint, it's awesome to have you on the show. How's it going, man?
Hey, Jeff. It's going all right. How about you?
I'm doing the best I can.
Yep.
You know, so bored during the pandemic that I'm interviewing my friends in my basement.
And I'm so bored I'm answering questions.
All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to start things out here with a few general questions that I ask each of our guests to help our listeners get to know you a little bit better, just in case they don't know you too well. But if you don't know Clint, shame on you. But by the end of this, you all know him very, very well. So the first one is a throwback. If you can remember, what was your earliest inspiration to compose? And maybe not specifically to write music on paper and have other people play it, but what was your earliest inspiration to create your own music?
Okay. So if I go back, as far as I can really remember, I remember like taking piano lessons from my grandmother, and there were times I was pretty big into like Mario games at this like middle school, elementary school age, and I would find like a song I liked from a game and I'd try to arrange it for just piano. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to put stuff onto a piano and try to play it, and then I was trying to arrange things like that, still sort of video game-esque music for middle school band. I remember doing like a Mario Kart thing. I haven't thought of this memory in years. It just kind of is coming back. So a lot of it was just like kind of arranging, kind of exploring, like I think I used like print music at the time, and just sort of putting things on a Sibelius, or I guess print music and then Sibelius later. But I really liked to do arrangements, I think. That was where I started. So taking a song that I liked and arranging it for marching band or for jazz band or for a wind ensemble. And that might have just at first come from just curiosity, or just like, I really like this song and I should bring it to band. So I would do that. Whenever I first started thinking about really wanting to do it though, was sort of when I was in undergrad, and I was playing in my own group, as well as like preparing for my recital. And I really liked newer music. I as much as I love jazz and I love playing standards and all that, I really like listening to people who were writing their own stuff. I like to see what would just come out from their brain naturally. And so I thought maybe I should try to write some just jazz stuff. And so I just started writing tunes that way. So really sort of just maybe because of my interest in new music, not new music as in like 20th century, but new music is just music that has not been played by other people yet. That really fascinates me,
Yeah.
just being able to do something that, regardless if it's good or bad, that nothing else has actually done yet.
Right. That's really cool. And I love that you mentioned that video games were sort of your earliest inspiration, because I'm going to bring up a video game arrangement of yours later on in this interview that I thought was really cool.
Great.
Are there any composers that you would say have such a great influence on your writing that they're sort of part of your musical DNA?
Yeah. One that jumps out right away is Miguel Zanon. So Miguel Zanon is an alto saxophonist. He's in New York City, but he writes for the SF Jazz Collective, and that's sort of where I first heard of him. The SF Jazz Collective is non-et. I guess that's not non-et. It's eight people that play out in San Francisco, and they have like really modern jazz arrangements with like super rhythmic elements, polyrhythmic elements. And I take a lot of that from Miguel Zanon's writing, rhythmic syncopations, modulation, stuff like that. So I get a lot from Miguel Zanon. I love Maria Schneider, big band composer. She's like my celebrity crush. I had the privilege of getting to meet her and work with her a little bit. She just started as the HMI director at University of Miami right when I left. So I just missed working with her a lot. But Maria Schneider's music is so beautiful, and I really listen to that a lot. But then, and there's way more jazz people in there, like Chris Potter, Donnie McCaslin. But I liked a lot of like hard rock. Mm-hmm. or like maybe new metal, I don't know, but like System of a Down, Dream Theater. I went through like a phase where I listened to a lot of punk, like pop in like high school. And as much as I don't listen to that so much now, it definitely still creeps into my inspirations, like kind of like open fifths and guitars, mm-hmm. and like rhythmic strumming patterns, even in like my jazz stuff. So yeah, Maria Schneider, Miguel Zanon, heavy rock things, Led Zeppelin, stuff like that.
Nice. I can definitely empathize, especially with like the middle school influences that are just like ingrained into my brain.
Yeah.
Like I just finished.
Can't get them out, no matter how hard.
I just finished a middle school band piece that quotes a vocal line from a song by The Used. Like it just like fit perfectly into it. I was like, I haven't listened to this in years, and it's still there. Okay. Number 3, what are you listening to the most right now? So like if you turned on Spotify or whatever, what's on repeat on your phone?
That's always a hard question, because I feel like the answer should be easy, but then I'm like, what am I listening to? In the last couple of days, I just played a gig with my mom and brother, and we did Lake Street Dive's version of I Want You Back. So I started listening to Lake Street Dive again, which is pretty different than what I normally listen to, but it sort of get me into that like kind of feel goody. It's not really neo soul, but like funky jazz thing. Mm-hmm. But that's always there. And I always go back to Chris Potter. I'll always put on Chris Potter Underground for like that kind of heavy funk / rock mm-hmm. stuff. Always listening to Underground. I'm Donnie McCaslin. If you haven't listened to his album Blow, that's one that I put on a lot. Donnie McCaslin, Chris Potter, a little bit of Lake Street Dive right now.
Nice. Very cool. I'm glad that I finally gotten out of my Hamilton kick from July. It's the only thing that's been on in our house. What love is. Now, I know that you, and you've already alluded to this because you have such a wide range of tastes in music, that you write for ensembles of every shape and size and for every genre. But do you have a favorite medium to write for?
I guess. I don't know. That changes too. That's one where my opinion on it will always go from one to the other. There was a point in time when I was lucky enough to be writing for more people before COVID, that I was actually doing a lot of like classical, not classical, but like I guess yeah, more on the classical side of things. So like some chamber music stuff. And I was like, I really like this. I really like kind of in a weird way being in control of like all of the elements. Whereas if I'm writing for jazz, sometimes with the improvisation, you open these free sections up. But I think big band music, I really like writing for large jazz ensemble. I like, I like the sound of 5 saxophones. I mean, you can do so much with adding other colors and adding strings, everything, but just the sound of 5 saxophones is great. I love writing for big band. So I'd probably have to say big band, but that'll change. Who knows?
Was it always that way for you, or was there a moment in like undergrad or in graduate school that it sort of flipped for you, like that was your thing?
I think that when I mostly was doing small group in undergrad, like maybe no more than 5 musicians, still jazz. I had not ventured into any classical or string or chamber music writing until grad school. So I think that I didn't really know what I was doing a lot in undergrad. And so I was kind of like shying away from large ensembles. I didn't know how to voice things. I didn't really know like the best way to create like a full band sound, like a full band sound. It would always just sound weak or something. But yeah, once I started like really studying it and really like analyzing scores, I just really started to like big bands. That was probably around like 3 years ago when I started in grad school. And then the chamber music stuff I started to like a lot more once I felt more confident with jazz. I was like, oh, now I actually understand how to write for strings a little bit. Maybe this would be fun. And then it started to become fun too. But I'm, as much as I love writing for all the different small groups and different combinations of instruments, I still have a big spot in my heart for big band and large jazz ensemble.
So do you have a consistent writing process? So like no matter what you're working on, do you sit down and do it the same way every time, or does it vary for you based on your projects?
I want to meet the person who has a consistent writing process. I want to learn from them because no, for me, not at all. I go back and forth for a lot of things. Sometimes it's a melody, sometimes it's a bass line, sometimes it's a chord progression. I've been trying something newer recently, but I'll get to that in a second. So before, like a couple of years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, I would always come up with a cell, like a really small cell of something, whether that be like a 1/4 measure bass line that I started playing on the piano, or a chord progression that kind of moves up with like this, like or even just a sound like this Lydian voicing on the piano. I really like. How do I turn that into something? And I'll take that cell and I'll start to I'll put that cell with this melody. It doesn't really work. I'll put that cell with this bass line. It doesn't really work. It's sort of like a puzzle. I know that the core of it is this one thing. And I'll try to build around that. And usually, in my experience, the worst part is where you start and you're like, I have no idea what to do with this. I just know I have this one thing. But usually I'll come up with something else. Like, oh, what sounds really good with this Lydian shape on the piano is this like parallel moving thing in the saxophone. It's like, oh, okay, that could be really nice. And then all of a sudden I have that. So usually I come up with something small. But recently I've been trying to do this thing where I almost like storyboard my pieces in a way, where I'll, with no real plan, and I can sort of hear it in my head, but with no real plan of like any musical concepts, I sort of know, okay, well, I want an A section, and then I want that to last like 3 minutes, and I want it to be a slow build, and that's it. That's all I know about it. I can feel that that's where it should go. I don't know anything about the harmony or even the instrumentation sometimes, but that's what I know is going to happen. Then after that, like 3-ish minutes, that's where the first climax happens, and there's like this big release, like 3 minutes into the piece. So I'll kind of come up with a storyboard like that. I'm trying to do that more now. I find that I'm happier with my product after that, but it's also harder for me to like stick to that sometimes when I'm writing, and I'll want to just go back to my computer and start to note vomit onto the program. But I stick to that, and I come up with newer things that way. So for me, I find that it varies on how I'm writing. I also think that changing the way that I have my process and doing it differently results in me creating different music, and it's a little bit less of, I come up with more of a varied uh, group of songs or group of pieces that way, instead of trying to do it the same way every time. And I've found that I've started to put even like limitations on what I write, where, okay, not allowed. I'm never going to think of a good example off the top of my head, but as not a great example, like, all right, for this saxophone solely, I'm not allowed to have any drop two voicings. That's not a great example, but something like that. Like, I won't do that. That way I'll put myself on this limitation, or well, this has to be in 4/4. Something I'm not very good at. Keep me something in 4/4. But this section cannot leave 4/4. Or even more so, this section has to be in 7. I have to find a way to fit that. So I'll put restrictions on my writing, and that sort of helps me come up with newer things as well.
That's really cool. Next one's sort of based in that same question. For those of you that didn't listen to episode number 1, I'll give you the quick version of this backstory. So this is being recorded in fall of 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. In March, basically the entire country shut down in America, and teachers had to teach from home, which I am a teacher, and I had to attempt to teach, watch my kids at the same time, and try to write things that I was commissioned to write. And everything I wrote was absolutely terrible. And I got into such a bad funk that I kind of like lost the will to write until a few weeks ago. And my question is for you, Clint. I know that you remained creative throughout the entire pandemic, especially the closure. What did you do to remain creative throughout that whole time when our lives sort of changed in a matter of hours?
Yeah, that was a hard one. I felt like I was lucky enough that right before the pandemic, I had just sort of finished some commissions for people, and I was honored to be doing that. It's kind of a shame that a lot of that had to be canceled after it was already written. I'm sure it'll happen, but once I realized like there weren't performances, there wasn't a way to get music out there, I was just thinking, what can I do? Like, how can what's the point? I worked so hard to be a writer and to get music out there. And I actually saw one of the first virtual ensembles I saw was Chad LB's big band. I don't remember the tune that he posted, one of his first ones, but he's a tenor player out of New York. And he did, like, every instrumentalist is like in a box and they're all recording from home. And I was like, that's really cool. It's a good way to get music that, I've written for myself, just like either while I was at school or just, on my own, or I wrote it for someone, but, they didn't get the chance to play it. It's a way to get that music out there. So I just reached out to a couple friends of mine and we put it together. And it was just, I found that it kept me busy during the quarantine, because I at the beginning of the lockdown, I wasn't really working. I taught some private lessons, but I was doing adjunct in a couple of places. So I had the time. And I wasn't overwhelmed at that point with the stress of trying to move things online, because I wasn't doing a lot. But I reached out to a couple of people, and I love working with Pro Tools, and I love putting projects together. It was really fun for me to get, I got, here's my bass track, and I lined my bass track up with my drum track, and all of a sudden I have a rhythm section. It's just a really exciting thing. And so then I tried to put myself at a horribly, horribly unrealistic one release a week. And that did not happen at all. It was way too much for me. I did 2 in 2 weeks, and then I think I took a week off and did a third, and then I took 2 weeks off and did a fourth, and then I took like a month off and did one, and then from that one, I have one in the works that's been in the works since like June, and it's still sitting on my hard drive waiting to be mixed. But I think the excitement of putting something out there and seeing the reactions of people that like it or I don't know. I guess it's not for them anyway. If they don't like it, they don't have to listen to it. But the thrill of sort of getting a whole project is what kept me going. I really enjoyed a final product that I could be proud of and putting all the work in. It was almost fun. It's rare sometimes after doing music for a long time. We all do it because we love it, right? We love music, but there are times that it's so overwhelming. You need to come up to this date. You have to get your piece ready for this date. You have a gig in 3 days and you haven't touched your tenor in a month because you haven't had any gigs. Wait, now you have to start teaching these, and it's all overwhelming. And then you forget, sometimes music is just supposed to be fun. We do music because it's fun. We play music because it's fun. And so that's what was the way that kept me going. There was no pressure. I didn't need to prove anything to anybody for these quarantine projects. I just was able to have fun doing it. I think that's what kept me going on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I will say I personally look forward to each of your releases over the pandemic. It was awesome. Your first one, was it You Don't Know What Love Is? That was your first one. I was just like amazed. Not only the quality of like the recording you got from all those individuals doing it at this like in their houses, but like the quality of the video too and the editing, I think. And you did that with all of your projects too, that we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit here. All right, the last one, and I know that you're a super techie guy here, so I'm sure there's more than one answer to this, but I ask every guest what their favorite music notation software is, what they prefer to use, but I'm also going to ask you what other softwares you use in your creative process, whether it's, your video editing software, or you mentioned Pro Tools or anything else that you like to use. So what are your softwares and why?
Okay, so for notation software, I've been using Sibelius since college, and I have not left. The reason for that is because I now know how Sibelius works, and I don't want to have to deal with learning something else. I've heard a lot of great things about Dorico, and I know Finale is really good, but the amount of time it would take me to get as efficient with those programs, I think, until Sibelius gets to the point where if I'm writing a whole piece where I need to beam things across triplets and Sibelius doesn't let me, then that is the most infuriating thing. But until I'm running out of workarounds to get through stuff with Sibelius, I'll probably stick with it. I think it works fine. I've managed to find a way that I can get my product. But I've seen a lot of my friends use Finale, and for their Finale looks great too. So I use Sibelius for that. For mixing and media, I'm a big fan of Pro Tools. Again, I haven't delved too far into Logic or Reaper or any of that, but Pro Tools is something that makes sense to me. I find that it is pretty universal in the film scoring world and in the video game scoring world, or media, all the media writing. It's what people use. And I have an Apollo Twin, which is a universal audio interface that I use for recording. So it's a 2-input interface. It's small, it's light, and it has a bunch of great plugins for guitars and sort of effects that you can use. It comes with Universal Audio's you can download or pay for all of their plugins, but it comes with like maybe 15 free ones. Nice. And I love it. It's been doing its job. It's portable, so bring it wherever I want. And then I also, for video editing, I use Premiere Pro. And just kind of like everything else, I felt whatever the program, like when I went to that they had Premiere Pro for free through Adobe, and so I used it. While there are, like, I know a lot of people use Final Cut, I know people use iMovie, and things look good, but Premiere Pro, I mean, I'm pretty sure they did the Deadpool movies on that, so it's a pretty powerful video editing program. And I have had a very love-hate relationship. My computer is the thing that needs the biggest upgrade. So when I bounce those videos after I edit them, what's hard is my computer can't handle the program. So I put in all the videos, I line them up. When I try to press play and watch it, it freezes. So I can't actually watch my video until it bounces. So I line up each scene, and then I bounce the video, and the bouncing takes anywhere from 3 to 7 hours. So
oh my gosh.
It's like, all right, it's midnight, time to bounce my video, set an alarm for 8 a.m., look at it. Oh, one of the shots is wrong. Got to bounce it again. But that's not a Premiere problem. That's a my MacBook problem right now. But yeah, Adobe Premiere Pro is great. I use it for all video.
Hi folks, if you like what you've heard so far, please make sure to subscribe to Composer Disclosure on your favorite streaming platform, Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you like to consume your podcasts. And please, if you feel so inclined, leave a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Also, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Composer Disclosure. Before getting back to my discussion with Clint, please enjoy this recording of his piece for saxophone ensemble, Continue On. All right, cool. So there's so much in your bio on your website that I came up with a few questions here.
Okay.
Your bio has no fluff. Like somebody like me, I add in some extra things so it looks like there's a lot, but you've got more in like 3 sentences in one of the paragraphs in your bio than in my entire thing. So there's a lot
here.
Be
prepared for hearing how it is fluff.
Okay. Here comes the fluff. The first thing that I'm super interested in is learning more about your experience at Miami. You earned your master's degree in studio jazz writing at the Frost School of Music, which sounds really interesting and really intimidating to especially someone like me that has more of a classical background. Could you explain to everybody listening, what exactly was involved in that degree and how is it different than like a traditional composition degree?
Yeah. So the studio jazz writing degree at the University of Miami was started by Professor Gary Lindsay, who actually just retired last year. He just had his final semester there during when COVID started. So he was going to have an amazing retirement party, but it's okay. But Gary Lindsay he's a phenomenal jazz educator. He has a great book that is sort of a standard in the jazz writing and the jazz voicing department. But when I was applying for grad schools, I hadn't really done a lot of writing. And so I applied to 3 schools for saxophone because that's what I had been doing. And I also, my saxophone teacher at the time, our saxophone teacher, Jason Kush, he said to me once, you should try to look at Miami for jazz composition. So I just did, and it worked out. And their program is I kind of call it like 60% jazz writing, 20% studio writing, and 20% mixing and audio. So a lot of what we did was we'd write for the large jazz ensembles there, small groups, jazz vocal ensembles, and jazz chamber groups, which are really interesting to write for, sort of like a quasi-classical jazz mix. And that's where a lot of the writing happened. We had big projects every year where we would have a theme. My first year, we had a theme where we took songs by Sting, and we would write them for MIDI, big band, and voice. And I did Synchronicity 2. So like really cool arrangements of stuff down there and compositions for jazz. While we also took classes in film scoring, virtual orchestration, which was sort of using virtual instruments and MIDI libraries to realize your compositions. I took some classical lessons as well, or orchestration class, which was, it was about writing for orchestra, but it was still very, there was a lot of media. It was more of a media-based orchestration where you'd write for strings. But we were sort of thinking, at least I was when I was in the class, thinking like a film score vibe more than like a contemporary classical vibe. Then we also had classes in our, we had classes in Pro Tools and video editing. And we had a recording ensemble that would be just in the spring. And what we did, one of my favorite things about going to school down there was the resources that we had to record our projects. So in the main building, there was a room that we could record our projects in. It was called Foster, and there was all these microphones, and we had a little booth. And anytime we had a project, we'd set up all the mics, record our project, mix it. So I had, for every class that I was in, we were responsible for writing the music or arranging the music, setting up recording dates, finding the musicians, recording the projects, playing in them sometimes if we were wanting to. Then we'd get our recordings, we'd mix them, we would master them, we would put the video to them, and then we'd create a product. So that was done countless number of times. So there was so much emphasis beyond just composition down there. And I feel like it was really, it's a lot of practical knowledge where, and I don't ever want to sound rude, but I feel like sometimes if you go for just a regular composition degree, depending on where you go, and I don't actually know this, I never went anywhere else, but you might be more like working really hard to create some big artistic experience, but you might not get as much practical experience where you're working with recording equipment, or you're working with musicians, or you're working even with different film composers and some of the film teachers there. So I feel like we had a really good overall education on how to write for multiple different groups, not just jazz. I mean, when I was down there, I very rarely would write anything that was what you would expect to be a traditional big band arrangement. A lot of it was very creative and very, or at least trying to be creative on my end. But I thought it was a great 2 years. I learned so much more than I ever thought I could learn about writing down there.
It seems like it's like a super fast paced and like intense program. Is that? Am I?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. There's always everyone always told me when I got there that like no one ever sees the jazz writers because they're too busy writing 7 pieces a week or something. I was like, no, that'll be fine. And then you're up all night trying to finish your project. I remember thinking my last semester would be my easiest, and it was absolutely not. It's just like it was a lot of nonstop writing, but I have a bigger portfolio of pieces from it, and I've learned a lot of different things. I have a bunch of different groups, and it was a hard 2 years, but it was a really good 2 years.
Yeah, and I can vouch. I've listened to a lot of your arrangements that you posted during your time there, and the quality of the facilities that you were able to use, and the quality of your writing, obviously, was awesome.
And the musicians that go to school there too,
right?
Oh, they're such great instrumentalists.
One that sticks out to me in my memory. You posted an arrangement of the Grinch.
Yeah,
that was so cool. Like I think I might be most of your views on that video, wherever it is.
Oh, thank you.
It's so cool. Yeah. So I know that you obviously did perform while you were there, but was there a performance aspect of that degree that was required?
There's not actually. No, you do not have to. You do not have to play in any ensembles. I didn't want to stop playing. I auditioned for the big band. I was honored to be in the CJB while I was down there for both years, playing Barry, which was super fun. I played in one of the jazz combos. I played in the sax ensemble. I played for different people's recitals. So you do not have to play. I really wanted to keep playing. I didn't want that element to go away. So I made sure to keep doing it. Definitely didn't practice as much as I used to.
I think you'd be fine if you toned down your practicing a little bit based on what I remember from undergrad. Could you tell us a little bit about the people that you got to work with there, especially in the jazz program? I know there were some big names I saw that you were able to work with.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously studying under Gary Lindsay was incredible. I also got to be with John Daversa a lot of the time. John Daversa is, he's a recent 3-time Grammy Award-winning composer and trumpet player.
That was my next question.
Yeah, he's awesome. He led the CJB down there, and it was great to meet and work with him. Carlos Rafael Rivera is the film scoring guy there, and he scored the show Godless. It's on Netflix, and it's he was an awesome teacher to have. And I had no film scoring experience. I still really don't outside of the educational side of it, but I learned so much from him. And a lot of the guest artists that we had Jeremy Levy come down. He's an orchestrator out in LA. He actually went through the Frost program. He's orchestrated for Frozen 2 and a couple, like one of the Lego movies. Like he's a big name. Jeff Fields was a guy who came down once in a while. He was, I think, one of the engineers on some of the Gordon Goodwin stuff. But some of the two of my favorite guest artists, or maybe 3, we had Maria Schneider, which again is amazing, and she was around more often recently than when I was there. But the one time she came, she was there for a week, and we got to play a piece of hers in the big band, and she got to listen to some of our music, and she's just an honor and a joy to be around. And I got to drive her to her hotel, which was horrifying. I remember
You got the chauffeur. Nice.
Yeah, this is one of my most stressful moments ever. If anybody knows me, I am absolutely a giant disaster. My car is a mess. Like, I'm not clean. And a concert ended, and Gary Lindsay's like, Clint, would you be able to drive Maria Schneider to your hotel? And I was like, sure. And we're walking to my car, and I'm like, oh my God, my car's a mess. And I was like, you can put your stuff in the trunk if you want. And she opens the trunk, and I'm just grabbing stuff out of my front seat and trying to throw it out. So like, she's not seeing how much of a mess I am. That was funny. Dave Holland came and played with us. That was really fun. We recorded an album with Adam Rogers. He's a great guitar player who plays with Chris Potter. Really, the list is endless. More names keep popping up. Christine Jensen is a great composer from Canada who came down and did some classes with us. Really, really, really diverse group of composers and musicians and instrumentalists that I could learn from, and who listened to my stuff and gave me some great feedback too.
You mentioned John Daversa's album that won 3 Grammys, and you played a role in engineering that album?
I played some sort of role.
Okay.
This is where that fluff comes in. So if you look on the album and you see on the list of credits under additional engineers is a big old Clint Bleil right there, and that's me, which is great. But really, if I'm going to be totally upfront, what happened was John approached me because he wanted to record theremin on his album. And he was like, do you have any good theremin plugins? And I was like, I don't, but I know that the computer in Gary Lindsay's office does. So we met up, and I went up there, and we searched through, and we found some good theremin plugins, and we came up with one, like, sort of mixed and matched. We find one we like. And then we recorded him playing the theremin part on the piano, or on the keyboard. And then that was it. And that gave me a Grammy.
Nice. Did they send you a little trophy?
No,
or
I did not get a trophy.
Oh.
A lot of my friends did. A lot of people that were at Miami played on the album, so they have them. But if you go on allmusic.com, I think it's what it is, AllMusic, you can see Clint Bleil, engineer. Like,
Grammy-winning engineer. Nice.
That's right.
That's awesome. Now, you're not only a Grammy award-winning engineer, you're also an award-winning composer. While reading through your bio, I saw that you've won a couple awards, one of them being a Sonic Award for a piece that you wrote called It Matters.
Yeah.
And then you also won a Downbeat Student Music Award in 2019 for an arrangement of I'll Remember April. Do you want to talk about those 2 projects and really what those awards are? Because to be honest with you, I don't know what a Downbeat Student Music Award is.
That's okay. Yeah. So Downbeat is a jazz magazine that's throughout the nation, and they have monthly editions, and every they usually do like reviews of albums, and then people will be interviewed for it, and it's always an interesting read. But every year they have the Student Music Awards, where they have categories for composing, mixing, solos, groups. So like you could win best group, best improviser. So my second year at Miami, I just applied for a couple of them, and one of them was small group arrangement. So I sent I'll Remember April in, and that one won, which was really cool. And I'll Remember April was an arrangement for nonet. It was trumpet, alto, tenor, trombone, vibes, guitar, piano, bass, and drums. We recorded that here in Pittsburgh, actually, with a lot of great Pittsburgh musicians, including it was Jason Kush, our teacher. Kevin McManus, Dave Wigenbach, Adam Kantz, Ken Karsh on guitar, Eli Aragon, Justin Vorp, and Antonio Cruz. And that was really fun to put together. I was honored to have won that. The Sonic Award, there's this group called ISJAC, and they're International Jazz Composers Group, and they have the symposium every 2 years, and it's relatively new. But jazz composers from all around the world go to it, and it's getting bigger and bigger. I just went to this last one in Denver, which was in the summer of 2019. Chris Potter was one of the people there, Vince Mendoza, Christine Jensen was there, Darcy James Argue was there. So some really great composers were there, like giving presentations. And just like before, you could apply to have your pieces, like a recording for your piece, and if you were selected, and a lot of people were selected, you could get like one of the guest artists to sort of like talk about it with you in front of people, so you can have your piece sort of critiqued, and it's a good way to meet a bunch of people. Mine was lucky enough to win the Sonic Award, which is like the best of its category. When my category was student composition for large ensemble, like student large ensemble. Actually, I think it was just student, like anything student was mine. And it was this piece called "It Matters," which I actually wrote during undergrad. There's a small group version of it that we played with on the Blau Brothers album, and I just felt like it would be better as a large ensemble piece, so I arranged it for large ensemble. It's different than a lot of the stuff I normally write. A lot of the stuff that I write has like a lot more rhythmic and angers and elements to it, but "It Matters" actually is sort of supposed to be kind of hopeful. The reason I don't know if I've ever disclosed this information really to anybody.
You heard it here first.
Yeah,
right. Composer disclosure.
Yeah, there it is. I am very, and this is different than most composers, I think, and this is probably not a good thing. I have a hard time sometimes writing based on emotion. I write a lot based on either technique or just sort of what I'm feeling in the moment, like what I think sounds right. I do struggle with finding a way to get music to convey emotion. Sometimes it just does, just because it's music and music conveys emotion to people. But "It Matters" was different. So it was just like the fact that I was writing it, and it was this new harmony thing that I liked, and I was listening to a lot of Maria Schneider, of course, and it has this different feeling to me. It just is almost like I didn't write it. I know that might sound a little pretentious, but like it was weird. It was just like, this is too good to have come out of me. So the reason it's called "It Matters" is because, sometimes people like can say things like, oh, it's just music. It's just music. I don't know, man. Music really does matter. Like, it does a lot of things for people. It helps people heal. It helps people feel better if they're in a bad place. It helps people cope through a lot of things, and it helps people just have a good time and relax. So music really does matter, and that's sort of why I called it that. It was just at that point in time. I felt like that needed to be said. Like, this all matters,
That's awesome.
That's not a great story, but it's a story.
That's a good story, man. So we've talked a lot about your past up until now. I noticed in your bio that you're currently an assistant professor at Washington and Jefferson.
Yes, just started this fall.
Awesome. For those that may not know, where is Washington and Jefferson College, and what all are you responsible for teaching there?
Yeah, so I just started there this fall. I was Kyle Simpson, who's a great trumpet player and another fantastic composer, mainly a film composer and jazz composer in Pittsburgh. He was there. He was on sabbatical. I was his sabbatical replacement last fall. Mm-hmm. And then he's moved on to WVU teaching composition, and I moved to WJ. Washington Jefferson College is in Washington, PA. So it's about 30 minutes south of the city, 35 minutes south of the city. It's a nice private school and small music program, but I'm teaching music theory, saxophone lessons, some clarinet lessons, a music technology class, and then I'm leading the wind ensemble and the jazz ensemble as well. We actually the jazz ensemble just finished recording because of COVID, of course, we're not having concerts, but we had a couple of recording sessions and people recording from their house. We did a recording for their homecoming, which is tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow being October 2nd. So that's nice. And it's great to be down there. I do love teaching. I really like teaching music theory, actually. It's not something I thought I would like as much, but I would like relearning music theory.
Right.
And if any of my students listen to this, they're like, I'm glad you like it because we hate it. But but I do find it fascinating, and I like going through and sort of relearning how music theory was taught and sort of is. And, it reminds me like, oh, maybe I should try some of these techniques again in my stuff.
one thing that I noticed when I first started teaching high school kids right out of undergrad, that there's kind of like an awkward energy being so close in age to them. Is that kind of a weird thing for you teaching undergrad students?
Yeah, a little bit. Especially last year. This year it's not as weird, but yeah, it feels like I'm like, even when I'm in my office and the other music faculty walk by, I kind of feel like I still need to be sure I'm allowed to be doing what I'm doing. But I'm like, wait a minute, I can do whatever I want. I'm the teacher here. But yeah, I think there's a decent level of respect there. I mean, but I'm not an overly professorial person. I think I'm pretty down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty awkward.
The cool professor.
No, not cool, like awkward, like
Okay.
down to earth, awkward, like kind of like weirdo. So I give that vibe off, which I think is fine. I think because I come across as kind of like awkward or goofy, it is a little bit more personal of a relationship.
Gotcha.
And that's how it was. Not like my professors in Miami were awkward, but in Miami, a lot of the teachers were very they were much more down to earth and direct. It wasn't a super collegiate, like, I don't know. I don't want to sound rude either again, but like collegiate uppity thing. They were just really, really cool, and they told you how it is, and that's the way I try to be too.
Yeah.
I never want to like make anyone feel bad for something. I just want them to practice, become a rehearsal.
You've had a lot of great role models as far as professors go.
Yeah.
Throughout our undergrad experience at Slippery Rock.
Absolutely.
Go Rock. And I'm sure at Miami too. So yeah, you're wearing a Slippery Rock shirt right now.
I am.
Represent.
It's
Nobody can see you, but
no, it's my sleeping shirt.
okay. So outside of teaching at Washington and Jefferson, I know you gig a lot too, or at least outside of COVID you do, and I know you have a few times, and you have a couple groups, right? A quartet and the Bleil brothers, right?
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about both of those groups, like what you play, and if there's any way that we, like, do you have a Bandcamp or a SoundCloud or something that we can support you on?
Absolutely. So my quartet that I have is much newer. We've only played a couple times. I was really starting to go out and try to get stuff happening right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a few recordings. We had during COVID, Chris McGraw, who's a great bass player in Pittsburgh, had a virtual jazz festival. And my quartet did a virtual thing there. It was me, Jake Shapiro is an amazing piano player from Miami. Well, not from, I met him in Miami. He's from Chicago. Eli Narragon and Justin Bort. Justin Bort's a Slippery Rock grad as well. We played some stuff with that. But not a lot of recordings right now, just because we haven't, that was kind of new. But that group definitely focuses more on modern arrangements of jazz standards. So I'll take something like a recording of All the Things You Are, that I sort of tried to deconstruct with like this ascending bass line in like a syncopated fashion. The Bleil brothers is much more, there's more of a group dynamic to that. So that group started back, must have been 2014, 2015, probably 2014, because I know that my brother was still in high school when we started it, and I was probably a junior in college. It was around 2014. And it was mainly started, I feel like we were listening to a lot of Snarky Puppy at the time. So we were doing like what a lot of, younger college combos would do. Like we tried to do Lingus, Shofukan. We did some Strasbourg, Saint Denis. And then we started writing. And I started writing for that group more. And at a moment we had like an identity crisis where we'd play like some like shuffle hip hop groove funk tune that would go right into a calypso, which would go into a Dixieland tune. So we never really had a sound at that point in time. Recently, we've sort of decided our sound is sort of, hence the name, more Brecker Brothers-y.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to kind of stick with more of the electronic thing, not electronic in the terms of contemporary electronic again, but more like electric bass, synths, effects pedals. We like Brecker Brothers style stuff, as well as Void. Void is Troy Roberts' group from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And Troy Roberts is Pennsylvania's new jive groups. But the Blau Brothers, we recorded a CD in 2016. And that's on Apple Music, iTunes, and Spotify. So you can check it out there. We don't have a Bandcamp, but you can check it all on Spotify. And that first album is actually on YouTube. We came out with an EP just last August called Pizza Mountain, which is I think you might have been graduated at this point. Pizza Mountain was a giant stack of Domino's pizza boxes that lived at my house my senior year at Slippery Rock. So that name stuck by, and our album, our EP, Pizza Mountain, came out last year. That was recorded in Miami with different musicians or different rhythm section guys from Miami. And then we played a gig at Jurgles maybe about a month and a half ago, with some new music, which was great. A lot of rock influence to that. And we have one song that we wrote with my mom, actually. It's called Not Lost. It's on YouTube. It's a, if I do say so myself, a beautiful piece that sort of is written about my grandparents, both my mom's parents, my mom's dad and mom and her brother, their fight with cancer, actually. So that was another sort of rock-ish thing that we wrote that was a lot more sentimental than some of the other stuff we play.
Doubt, fears, truth, tears, try, fight, day and night, sick, weak, outlook bleak, hope, rain, night and day. My soul will fly, my soul will fly, broken body behind, and I'll be on your mind, but my soul will fly. My soul.
That's a nice segue to my next question here. Speaking about your mom, you come from a very musical family, and you even feature your parents and your brother in some of your videos that we discussed earlier. Just a general question first: what was it like growing up in your household? Like, was music just like a daily thing? What was it like growing up in a household where everybody's a musician?
Yeah. So my grandma was my piano teacher. She still teaches piano at her young age of 86. She's still teaching lessons. She's actually using Zoom now, which is pretty cool. So she taught me piano. I never really, I knew my mom was a singer, but being young, it was just like, oh, mom has to work tonight. So I didn't really know. And my dad, I think a lot of the music stuff for me at home was less about them like trying to groom me to be some musician, but just the music that they would listen to, or the music that they would get me listening to. And I feel like that's sort of why I never got really into pop music. I never really listened to the radio. I don't like that stuff. Maybe some of it, but it's not for me. But my dad would always listen to this band called Morphine in the car, like when I was really young, and I knew all the words. And it's this band. I think it was just bass, drums, and Barry sax, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And he would play all the time. And I guess when I was young, I knew all the words. And then he put it on like one day a couple of weeks ago, and I still remember some of the words. So I think growing up with a musical family, they never tried to force music on me. I was lucky because my mom seemed to know everybody. So when I was in 5th grade and taking saxophone lessons, I was studying with Eric DeFade, who's like the tenor saxophone king in Pittsburgh. As a 5th grader, I was lucky enough to do that.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I've gotten gigs probably because of her, and she knows people. So that's been helpful. Thanks, Mom. My dad, he does, I guess, in a little bit more now, but he didn't really play a lot of drums whenever I was younger. He had his own catering business, and a very successful catering business, and some restaurants that he had that that were a little bit, it was a lot of work when you own a business. But he had a band called Kids After Dark whenever he was like in his mid-20s. That I thought was pretty cool, and he'd show us that too. But he didn't play as much at home. He was more the guy who would show me stuff. I remember as a young kid, he would come to my room and he'd put one specific one. He'd put on Jethro Tull's "Thick as a Brick." If you're familiar, it's a pretty long song. He'd come in my room and turn it on and be like, fall asleep to this, you'll like it. And I'd go turn it off, like, because I couldn't sleep, and he'd come back in and turn it on. So yeah, I never would have listened to Jethro Tull if it wasn't for him.
Right.
Maybe that's where I get some of my like classic rock, prog rock. He's into Pink Floyd, stuff like that helps me check out other types of music.
This past spring, you wrote for Project Trio.
Oh yeah.
Whenever they were the artists in residence at the Slippery Rock Honors Flute Festival.
Yeah.
And I had a student who was involved in that festival and got to premiere your piece. Do you want to talk a little bit about working with Project Trio, writing that piece? Because I thought that piece was really cool too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so that was a fun one. Dr. Eisenreich, Cassandra Eisenreich, is the flute professor at Slippery Rock, and I actually think she saw the video with the Grinch too. And that's sort of why she reached out to me. But she initially wanted to do something for their holiday concert that was odd meter syncopated, very rhythmic. And we were talking for a long time, and it really took us forever to figure out what we wanted to do with it. And then we didn't talk for a while. And then she's like, it would be better if we have this Project Trio coming. We should think of something that you could arrange for flute ensemble and Project Trio. And I was like, that was great. And it led another couple of weeks of ideas thrown back and forth, and it was hard. We couldn't think of something what we wanted to do. We knew we wanted to mash something up, because Project Trio has a lot of videos of them where they would mix two pieces together, and we wanted something that was sort of maybe a little bit more like classical mixed with something that was more pop, but we couldn't get the vibes of the pieces to match. And so we ended up doing sort of two pop things. The piece is called "The Lovely, the Dreamers, and She," and it's not a medley. It's more of a mashup of the Rainbow Connection, and "Isn't She Lovely?" And the reason we chose to do that was because it was a positive message. Both of those are very positive songs, and they're happy and they're fun and they're groove oriented. And the Project Trio grooves like crazy, so it felt really good to put them in it. But of course, being me, got to throw in that odd meter, right? So what was born was sort of initially, the piece starts as Rainbow Connection, sort of over top of the groove and the licks from "Isn't She Lovely?" So you have the Rainbow Connection melody happening, and then all of a sudden from "Isn't She Lovely?" And slowly, as the piece happens, it ends up being taken over by "Isn't She Lovely?", where you can hear melodic ideas from the Rainbow Connection in the back. Luckily, the harmony for those two pieces is not that different, so it wasn't too bad to mix that together. Nice. But working with Project Trio was awesome. Those three guys are super, super fantastic musicians. Greg, the flute player, is a really awesome beatboxing flutist. And he had some beatbox elements in that piece that we did. And the kids, I think, liked it too. It was hard, and it was definitely a really, really hard piece with the counting and the 4/3 and the sections of 5/4. But the students put it together super well, and it was really fun. And I hope it gets played again, because it was a good time.
We already talked about this a little bit, and you kind of alluded to it, but you released a bunch of videos throughout the pandemic of different arrangements and original compositions of yours, and they really showed how eclectic your taste is and how versatile you are as a composer and arranger. You covered everything from "You Don't Know What Love Is," arranged for big band, to you wrote this original piece for saxophone ensemble, "Continue On," that is amazing. And then the arrangements of like "Death of a Bachelor" for clarinets and "Carry On Wayward Son," which features your family, which is amazing. I'm going to link to all of this for you people so you can witness this. And then there's even this Animal Crossing arrangement that you did. That's incredible. Like,
Yeah,
and you referenced video game music earlier, and I was like, I actually had not listened to it until today, and I clicked on it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then you just start shredding over the changes to the Animal Crossing theme, and I was like, this man's insane. He's just otherworldly. So, I guess that was all a statement. But my question is, what influenced you to have just like this wide range of like interests in these different kinds of music? Like most people like stick to one thing, like I am a jazz person and I'm going to only stick to jazz, and you like classical, jazz, sort of pop music, pop rock, and video games. Like what
Dude, I don't even know. I don't know. I guess I think a lot of it just came to the music I listened to. Maybe instead of thinking about like how different music inspires me to write the way I do, it's maybe even more along the lines of that I'm inspired by the music I like, and I like to arrange that music in different ways. So with those specific songs, You Don't Know What Love Is, it's just a great jazz standard. There's a really awesome version of it by Veronica Swift. That's sort of where that inspiration came. And I thought it would sound really great as a swing and big band chart. And I had listened to Thad Jones a lot, and I like, this kind of sounds like it could be a Thad Jonesy thing. It's not really, I mean, at least Thad Jones voicing wise, it doesn't really sound anything like Thad Jones, if only. And then with Animal Crossing, that one was like, okay, Animal Crossing just came out. I've been playing this game for hours and hours and hours because there's nothing else to do. And I thought the reason I did that one in that way was, how many instruments do I have in my apartment right now? This is the exact number of instruments, including my girlfriend's ukulele. And I was like, well, this is the number of instruments. This is what I'm writing for. So that was another one of those sort of boxes I put myself in. I said, you have to write for this number of instruments because these are all the ones that you have in the house. And while some of them, like the saxophone parts, were pretty easy, some of them, like the guitar parts, took me forever to be able to play because I'm not a great guitar player. So it took me a long time to write it. But that was like a challenge. The saxophone ensemble piece actually was written for the Sax Ensemble Miami. So that doesn't count. I already wrote that. But I thought it would be a good way to get it out there. Death of a Bachelor was another a girlfriend decision. She wanted to be involved, and I was like, that's a great idea. We never have done anything like this together. And one of the only things that my girlfriend and I like together musically is Panic at the Disco. Mm-hmm. It's my guilty pleasure, and she really likes Panic at the Disco, so we listen to that group a lot. And we thought Death of a Bachelor was good enough that it could be kind of broken down into just 4 clarinets. Nice. That's another one. It's like, okay, Steph, you play clarinet, I play bass clarinet. Let's just make. It was just going to be 1 and 1, and that was too hard. So I decided to do 2 and 2. Nice. So a lot of it maybe is more that my influences, which really stem to. I mean, with all of those things, the common denominator is not really instrumentation or style, for me at least, as much as it is harmony, like harmonic decisions and rhythmic decisions. Mm-hmm. I'm always really big into messing with rhythm, messing with time, messing with meter.
You're reading my mind here, man.
Yeah,
that's my next question.
That's your next question. Yeah, so the influences I take from other people, and I that's why recently I've been really more into arranging than composing. But like I like taking something that already exists and doing it another way.
Like you just said, you really like to mess with rhythms and meters, syncopation, things like that. And one thing that I've noticed listening to your music all day today is how like, natural and unforced those things sound in your music, and not like somebody like me, for example, that would be like, oh, this has been in 4/4 for too long, better put in a 7/8 measure. Can you sort of explain your approach to messing with those elements, whether you're arranging something or writing something original? Yeah. Like, do you methodically plan that out, or when you hear a phrase in your head, do those things just happen?
There are examples of both, and sometimes it's easier for me to explain when I think about a specific piece. So, like in one example, I had an arrangement of I'll Remember April, and I was having it rotate between 4/4 and 3/4, but then that turned into 4/4 3/4. 4/4 so it's like a 15/4. Is that right? 4/8. Yeah, 15/4. And I just kind of kept that groove, and then I realized, well, okay, if that happens for if that happens for 4 measures, and I do a dotted eighth note, which is 3 eighth notes, that lines up after so many iterations.
Right.
So this is like sort of math jazzy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But you have 15 eighth notes that's divided into a group of 8, a group of 6, a group of 8, and a group of 8. And then you have just 3 eighth notes, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So I don't know, that equals some number of dotted quarter notes per 4-bar phrase. And I was like, that kind of works. That lines up. So it sounds kind of wonky. And then all of a sudden, boom, we hit one together. So there are sometimes I'll look for patterns like that. And I'll say like, well, I know that this will line up after 5 bars. So I'll make my phrase fit that way.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times it's just, I think it stems to the music I listen to. Like some of the Dream Theater stuff is pretty heavy in the time signature changes. Chris Potter, for sure. Miguel Zanon, absolutely. One of the things I do pretty consistently is if something's in 3/4, it feels like it can be extended to 5. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, I guess it's kind of couple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3,
Mm-hmm.
4, 5. So I guess it's more like a 6/4 going to 5/4. And same thing with 7/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead, you need 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, and you like just cut out that one beat, and all of a sudden there's a lilt. But I think the reason it sounds effortless in a way is because the people I get to play are just so good. I'm like really honored to know people that are good at their instruments. Like every time I bring, and I'll throw Justin Warp another shout out. Every time I bring Justin Warp a chart, like he just plays it. Mm-hmm. And then like he plays all the hits, all the subdivisions, but he makes it sound easy. So I blame the musicians for making it sound like that, not me, because they do a really good job. They yell at me the whole time about how hard it is, but
you're too modest. It's your writing as well. We are both lucky to know a lot of great musicians, but it's definitely your writing as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. If anybody wants to reach out to you to discuss collaborating with you or commissioning you for anything, because this guy can literally write anything, people, classical, jazz, small group, big group, he's a monster.
Medium group.
Yeah, medium group, whatever size group, he'll do it. How can people get in contact with you about commissioning, collaborating?
So my cell phone number, no. So if you go on my website, my website's clintbleilmusic.com, and you can see that it's very well kept right now during COVID. But there's a contact page there. Just fill in something. I would love to write something for you. I'm super open to collaborations. Anything virtual is always very fun to sort of put together a remote concert or a remote piece together. But yeah, just my website. I also have a Facebook page, Facebook artist page, and an Instagram that you can check out too. But mostly my website is good. Again, that's clintbleilmusic.com.
What are your handles for your social media?
My Facebook is at Clint Bleil Music. It's my artist page. And my Instagram is CMB8481. I think I have a Twitter somewhere deep down, but you don't need to go on there.
All right. Anything coming up that you'd like to promote? I know there aren't too many performances or things happening, but any premieres, anything like that?
Unfortunately, not really. I'm in the process of finishing up my probably last for a while remote big band video. It's a big band arrangement of Cool, Leonard Bernstein's Cool from West Side Story.
Nice.
So you should look out for that in the next. I'm going to give myself 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
From whenever this airs. I also am in the very, very, very early stages of putting together a big band album. So
nice.
So if you're still interested in 2025, you can check that out. But yeah, if any events come up, any gigs, any commission performances, they'll be on my website as well under shows.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. As I get this podcast off the ground. Good luck with the remainder of the school year. And good luck with all of your work. I can't wait to see all of the stuff you accomplished. You've already accomplished so much, and
thanks, Jeff.
We're not old yet, so
that's very true.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Yep. Thanks, Jeff. That was a lot of fun.
Composer Disclosure is produced by Jeff Herwig and is a product of M&M Music Press LLC. Music in today's episode features Freedom by Jeff Herwig, I'll Remember April, arranged by Clint Bleil, You Don't Know What Love Is, arranged by Clint Bleil, Carry On Wayward Son, arranged by Clint Bleil. Continue On by Clint Bleil. You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, arranged by Clint Bleil. It Matters by Clint Bleil. Not Lost by Clint Bleil. And Animal Crossing New Horizons main theme, arranged by Clint Bleil. Special thanks to Clint for allowing us to use recordings of his music throughout today's episode. Please be sure to check out all of the links in the episode description, and don't forget to subscribe and download Composer Disclosure from your favorite streaming platform.